There are two things that will keep you from being successful. The first is if you don't have good motivation, okay? Because it's going to be hard. Like, if anything worthwhile is hard, you need the motivation. And the second thing is you need a plan and you need to stick to it. Look at your life, right? And this is how you avoid the burnout. Like, I'll say this, and some people will disagree with this. The cloud just makes everything easier.
Now, with all that said, there's still some skeptics out there arguing that cloud computing is eventually going to plateau and it's going to get overshadowed by whatever the next technology trend is. Do you think there's any truth to that, or is like cloud here to stay, like as the dominant force as it is now?
There is absolutely truth to that, and cloud will absolutely be here to stay.
Cloud computing is no longer the future. It's the now. In fact, if you're not already diving into cloud, you're already behind. But don't worry, it's not too late to catch up, because in this episode, I'm joined by Tracy Wallace, a seasoned cloud expert and I&E instructor, to break down what you need to start learning cloud computing right now. We'll explore how cloud can transform your career and the exact steps to get started, even if you're completely new to the field. And here's the best part. We are giving away 3 one-year annual premium I&E subscriptions later on in this video, giving you the tools you need to launch your career in tech. So make sure you stick around to find out how to win. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much. It is great to be back here. Always fun to talk to you.
I love having you on the channel just because you have so much information and you make it easy for us all to understand.
That is I have to say I was pretty proud. I had a colleague say that was my superpower. I did have to explain to her it's because I don't understand complex things. So I kind of have to make them simple if I possibly can try to understand them.
Well, you do a great job at it. So do you mind kind of telling everyone, giving them a bit of a backstory of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So my backstory actually started as a kid. And so this is going to be about 35 minutes of backstory. No, it really won't. But it was funny because I've had this conversation. I've had this thought. My parents have passed away, but like I didn't realize as a kid how much my parents were setting me up. They were giving me these STEM toys to play with and to build things with before there was even the concept of STEM, right? And it kind of instilled in me this desire to play with things, this desire or this lack of fear, not bravery, not courage, just lack of fear. I didn't even think about it, to break things. Building Legos or other things or playing around on a computer. And it just sort of got me into this mode that made me a really natural fit for IT. In my career, I was going through and I was in a place I didn't really want to be, and talking to my wife, and she's like, what's your favorite part of everything you've done career-wise? Clearly working with computers. And that got me really, I was doing some programming, some development, whatever we used to call it programming because I'm old and gray. But those were the things I really loved. And I was just fortunate enough to make a couple of, frankly, really lucky decisions and get really into IT and into IT training. And development and databases. And I did some systems work because, quite frankly, in the late 1990s, there was a lot of money in doing training for Windows server certifications. And then I kind of switched back into application development and databases, doing development and doing training. And this funny little thing called cloud came along, and I said, hey, this is kind of a neat way for me to host the things that I'm building, and I love building stuff, and this makes it really easy for me to build stuff. Hey, let's go ahead and let's play around with this. And honestly, that was like 15 years ago, a little over 15 years ago, and I've kind of been doing other things since, but my focus has, in terms of what I really love doing, has been cloud for like just about the last 15 years. And so, building training, love teaching people things and sharing information, consuming it and sharing it. And that's, again, I've been so fortunate in that's really been central to what I've done professionally for almost 30 years. And now I'm at the point where I get this great title, Director of Content Development. I get to work with our instructors and help, build the content that's helping people in their day-to-day. So that was kind of all over the map, but I was trying to make it so it wasn't a half hour.
I appreciate that. I've had this podcast now for about a year officially, and the YouTube channel even before that. And people, like, there's kind of a general theme when I'm asking people for career advice, like, what's that one technology people should be learning? And the cloud always comes up in that conversation. It's like, it's been called the backbone of modern technology, let's be honest. And from your perspective, what makes cloud computing so essential today? And why do you think people should be prioritizing learning it now?
There's two key factors when you say, okay, why is cloud so ubiquitous? And even if you don't realize it, and I'm not saying you, but anyone, you see it, you feel it, again, even if it's not recognized. The first is simple economics. And I was reading some articles the other day about some very large companies and what it was going to cost them to create factories for batteries for electric vehicles, and it's billions of dollars. And when you look at what the cloud companies invest in their data centers, it's hundreds of billions of dollars. Most organizations don't have that kind of money to build out a data center to do the things they want to do. And if they did, they wouldn't use but a fraction of that, right? And so what the cloud does is it lets you take advantage of all of these technologies, whether it's something as simple as hosting a website or something as complex as using the latest AI technology there. I've now officially said the letters AI.
Oh, come on. We're only a couple minutes into this interview.
I know I was actually a little late on it. Sorry about that. But, but really, like, anybody can get in and anybody can use those. And the economics make so much more sense than having to go and build out your own data center. Very few organizations could build out the data centers that are currently required to run the latest AI. It's as simple as that. The other factor that makes cloud so ubiquitous right now is the friction, the lack of friction. Right. And they kind of go hand in hand. But, if you are onboarding your personnel, frankly, there's things you have to do. And don't get me wrong, security people are probably going to bombard you if I say there's not that much you need to do. But, there's less. If you're, deploying applications, there's less friction than if you have to do it on your own hardware. And that's really kind of vague, and we could go deep into that. But to me, those are the two big things. And look, the world runs on economies, and if it makes economic sense, it's probably going to win. And in so many ways, the cloud makes economic sense. Not in every way, and you'll see some back and forth, and you'll see some people that have gone into cloud and had a terrible experience. Mostly, they got this insane bill they weren't expecting. And then, kind of come back off of cloud. But usually that's a matter of not really fully understanding how to use cloud and how to optimize your costs in cloud.
What do you mean we can't spin up hundreds of GPU instances and, pay nothing?
Yeah, and a lot of us have done that. I got a bill recently. I was playing around on my own Azure subscription. And oops, forgot to shut it. I was playing with them. Forgot I had it was like an $80 bill because I'm super careful about the machines I spin up. But that's still not something I was really excited to have that discussion with my wife, who was very cool about it. But yeah, those are absolutely, yeah. There's a lot there. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble, but you can also do some really cool things.
Now, with all that said, there's still some skeptics out there arguing that cloud computing is eventually going to plateau and it's going to get overshadowed by whatever the next technology trend is. Do you think there's any truth to that, or is cloud here to stay as the dominant force as it is now?
There is absolutely truth to that. And cloud will absolutely be here to stay. That's which it sounds like a contradiction. But I mean, the reality is anybody who says that the technology that we're using right now will be here and be the dominant technology has not been around IT for very long. I've been around IT long enough that I remember the days when there was nothing that would ever replace a mainframe, that mainframe computers were unbeatable. There were these things called supercomputers. The Cray supercomputer always comes to mind. Nothing was ever going to beat that.
Right.
Now I can literally go and for a short period of time, for like less than $100, I can have access to compute power that absolutely destroys what was available. There will be things that are going to surpass what we see as cloud today. Doesn't mean cloud's going away. In fact, cloud might be part of it, right? It might be the backbone. We don't even think about it, right? What's everybody been talking about for the last, 2.5 years, 2 years? It's been talking about generative AI. For the vast majority of people, guess where generative AI is going to live? It's going to live in the cloud, right?
Absolutely. And technology evolves at such a blazing fast rate. This one quote sticks out of mind that your modern calculator, like not your smartphone calculator, like your dumb calculator, has more computing power than the Apollo 11 spaceships that went to the moon.
Yeah.
And now compare that to your smartphone that's in your pocket, compare that to the immense power that's in, these cloud data centers. It's crazy. When you start talking about quantum computing and stuff, we're not going to have quantum computers in our, local homes, right? But hey, who knows, in the next, 10, 30 years, we all could have a quantum computer sitting on our desk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or in our pocket. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And how does that change things? Is the cloud still going to be there? I think it's a pretty good bet that the cloud is going to be there, or whatever is there is the descendant of what we know of as the cloud, right? Could it be true distributed computing? It could be. I think there's economic barriers to that, but it absolutely could be, but cloud's not going to go away. And, I kind of make that comment about, when I started out, mainframes were the thing, and I started out working. I didn't work like on the mainframe, but I worked on systems that worked on the mainframe, and that experience has led me directly to where I am today. Right. So cloud's probably going to be in some way surpassed, and probably faster than we think. But the knowledge and the understanding of what cloud is and being able to work in it now is going to be the logical step to whatever comes next.
Absolutely. And it's just the continued evolution. Tech evolves so quickly. You can't just stay stagnant and stick with what's going on now, because you're going to get left behind so quickly. And, I know that many people out there feel intimidated by the idea of diving into cloud, because it seems such a vast and complex field. But I don't think it really is. Cloud is just someone else's computer, someone else's data center. And what would you say to someone who is on the fence about starting because they feel overwhelmed about just something new like this? Here's what I would say. Don't expect to start out as a cloud architect. Don't expect to start out as a, quote, cloud engineer, because frankly, I'm not really 100% sure that there is such a thing as a cloud engineer, which, sorry, now you're going to get lots of comments saying that I'm an idiot. I'm okay with that. But there's reasons I feel that way. And I've actually talked about that on other episodes with you. But yes, cloud is vast, but also in many ways it's simple. One of the things, and we're going to go off on a little anecdote here. One of the things I used to always do when I was learning a new programming language is I would create a new checkbook. And I may have shared this story with you before, and if I did, I apologize, but I'm on it, so I'm going to continue. Yeah. And
the reason I did that was because it was something that meant something to me, and I could take my understanding of that problem and then I could use it and kind of build what I wanted to build and build an interface and build the code behind it. Now, thankfully for my wife, there's, better tools available for the bank, so she doesn't have to put up with me doing that anymore. But what it did was it let me take something I understood and kind of dip my toe into something new and big and complex, right? And I think that is, to me, the way you start in cloud. Don't start thinking about cloud and thinking about it's got to be well over 200 services that each and every cloud provider provides. Years ago,
got to be by now.
Years ago, I looked it up. I was doing a course and I wanted to look it up, and it's probably somewhere on a video and on our platform. And it was like all three of the providers were up above 190 or above 170, and it's up more than that now. Like, that's a lot of different things that you would need to know how to do, right? And like, I'm a database guy, and I'm a Microsoft. That's kind of where I made my money. For a long time, if you're going to put all your eggs in one basket, it was a good basket to put your eggs in. And but so SQL Server, and you don't hear a lot about it now, but like if you go to Azure, there's like 17, I don't know, a lot of different ways that you can deploy SQL Server, and it can get really confusing. But then you just say, hey, you know what? I kind of need a database. Let me just go and spin up a database on a small scale, see if it works, but then go back and say, okay, I know I need a database. Now let me look in more depth and figure out the right way to do this from an economic and security standpoint, right? But the point is, you don't go and say, oh my gosh, I need to know like 170 or 200 different services. You go like, hey, I know a little thing I need to do. Like, I'd like to be able to do that. And you dip your toe in and you get started in the cloud, and you find out that the cloud actually makes, like, I'll say this, and some people will disagree with this, the cloud just makes everything easier. Like, it is so much easier for me to stand up a database, or for me to host an application, or for me to set up a network. I'm not pulling cables, right? And so every little thing that you do is easier. And while you're doing that, you say, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. Then you start learning those fundamentals of cloud. Like, what is the cloud actually, right? And what you said is exactly right. It is somebody else's network, somebody else's computer, somebody else's data center. Okay, that's cool, right? But then you have this thing that, we talk about, a lot of times we talk about two different planes. I'm gonna go a little technical here, okay? You've got the control plane and you've got the data plane, right? And all those different services are about the data plane. What do I wanna do? Do I wanna do some computing, right? Do I wanna run an application? Do I wanna have a database? Do I want to have a cache set up for, or whatever it is, right? And there's a bunch of different data plane things you can do. Then you have the control plane, right? That's where I go into this nice web-based portal or this web-based console, and I click around and I create things, right? And that's the part that you do want to make sure as you get started, you get comfortable as quickly as possible with that control plane. And it's not, in its essence, complicated. Right? I need somewhere that I can go so I can spin up a EC2 instance, which is just a virtual machine, because I want to do some compute, right? Or I want to spin up a network. Okay, that all kind of makes sense. The basic things I want to do. Now, if you go in and you have no knowledge of IT, it probably is going to be overwhelming, right? And that's, again, you don't start as a quote cloud engineer, just like you don't start as a network engineer, right? Or an architect. You start out kind of doing the small things because that's how we learn. Right? Get the fundamentals of what the cloud is, of how you go in through the tools that are available to create little things. Because the way I create the big things in cloud, I put together a bunch of little things. And it kind of works. There you go. That was long-winded. I can't help it.
No. But it was so impactful. And one thing I'll add to that is, and we'll talk in this later, I'm sure, but to start, it doesn't take much. The barrier to entry is low to start playing around. Almost all the big cloud providers have like a free tier where you can start going in there and start poking around and playing around. Again, like, get familiar with it pretty quick, because you can quickly accidentally get a really large surprise there if you're not being careful. But, again, the barrier to entry is easy to start, like at least fiddling around with it, start trying to do some research and like set up your own labs and start testing things.
Yep.
It's really great.
And kind of carrying on with that, plug a little bit. I'm not here to plug the company I work for, but we do have, a lab environment. And, if you come with us and you take some of our content, you can go in and you can play with the labs, and they're guided and they're curated and they take you through. And honestly, there are also from the cloud providers, free lab environments. So what you said is absolutely right. You can go in and with any of the cloud providers, if you've never signed up for the cloud, you can go in and not only are there free tier services, but you have a free access to a lot of services. And usually what you do if you go in, like if I'm most familiar with Azure, but I know I've done this in AWS and Google Cloud as well, actually, as well as other clouds as well. But you go and say, hey, I'm signing up. And, they're like, yeah, come on in. We'll give you some free stuff to play around with and we'll give you a credit. And it's fantastic. And they get you hooked, and that's kind of the reason, right? They want you to use their product. But what you said is exactly right. You can get started, and here's what's really important, because all of this talk of ease, and we've talked around about it a little bit, but there are two really dangerous things with the cloud. One is that you can rack up like really bad bills. And two, everything that you do is by default, or at least possibly public. Like if I go and I download some code onto my local machine, and I'm running some code and I'm playing around with some code, that's just on my local machine, right? You have to be aware, everything that you put up in the cloud, it's in the cloud. There are public endpoints in the cloud. Now, look, at this point, everybody uses the cloud. There's really safe ways to use it, but you do have to be careful. So I'm putting that out there now, both of those things, because those are the two cautions when you're getting into cloud. Yeah, it's easy. Play with it. Sure. Particularly if you're playing with it on, an introductory where you've got the guardrails, where basically you could, and I've actually done this. I used to teach Microsoft courses, and I would get every month, because I was a Microsoft certified trainer, I had like a $150 credit or $200 credit. One time I literally used the entire thing in one night. Oops.
Oh my gosh.
Every organization, and now I'm be like, oh, it's so easy. Now I'm like, oh my God, be terrified. Don't be terrified, just be careful. But most organizations that I know have gotten at least the surprise 5-figure bill, like tens of thousands of dollars for a month, because oops, whatever. But you have to be careful about that. But within the right guardrails, again, it's not hard to get started. It's not hard to get in there, do one little thing and go, wow, this is not so bad. Don't think about the 200 plus services. You'll get there. But that's not where anybody starts with anything, right? You're going to code. You write one line of code to start, right? You don't write a 10 million line. Nobody writes a 10 million line code to let AI do that now. But you know what I'm saying? Like start small with the cloud 100%. And you'll find out it's really easy. Think of something you want to do that would be cool, right? And if you're not sure, there's so many people out there with ideas. Pick one. Do something
absolutely. Cool. No, it is really like there's so many neat things you can do. And, since we're talking about money in a different sense, though, I want to bring up, I want to address the elephant that's in the room, and that's on everyone's mind is the financial opportunities with this career path. It's cloud computing. Let's face it, is often marketed as this lucrative career, and you can make 6 figures super quick. And, first of all, I want to ask, is that true? Do you feel? And second, like, how does it compare financially to other roles in just tech in general? And then the third question here is, what can people do to better set themselves up to make them a more like ideal candidate to land one of these roles? I know that was a lot there.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to take these from my perspective with a little bit of a view of the industry as a whole. Okay. But let's go. The first one. Okay. Yeah. If you go and apply for a cloud job, are you going to immediately make six figures? If you were already in an IT role and were making six figures, yeah, there's a pretty good chance you might be able to do that. If you are straight out of college with no IT experience, it is not super likely that you're going to get out and in 1 year be making six figures. Now, some people do, okay, but some people who play basketball make it to the NBA.
No, you nail on the head right there. Yeah, absolutely.
It's possible, but that's not going to be the experience for most people who go into the cloud, right? And I would say somebody that goes into cloud with no IT experience and a year later is making six figures, there's a really good chance that they could have gone into a wide range of career fields and a year later be making six figures.
Right.
Now don't get me wrong. I do think, and I'm going to try to remember the second part of the question. I do think that if you want to go into an IT career field at this point, you have to know cloud, because I don't think there's very many IT career fields that are out there that don't have cloud. I think there 100%. Are some IT career fields where cloud is underrepresented right now, and those are opportunities. And this is personal experience, and I've done some research, but research into cybersecurity is a little bit murky. But I will say I think that cloud is underrepresented in cybersecurity right now. I don't think there's enough focus on applying cybersecurity skill sets that are directly applied to cloud and also really extend to be specific to cloud, if that makes sense.
I agree.
I think, but again, whatever your career field is, if you're in IT, frankly, even if you're not in IT, you should probably know cloud. I think, I will say that if you're in, let's say you're an application developer, okay, or software engineer, or whatever we want to call ourselves. If you understand cloud and you really get it, you're going to make more money. You're going to have more opportunity than someone that doesn't. Like, it's highly likely if you're in software engineering right now and you're writing code, this is not universal. Okay. But on average, it's pretty likely that your code, at least some of it, is either going to be residing in or touching the cloud. Right. And so the more you understand about cloud, the more opportunities there are for you to advance within the career field. If you are, writing code and you're checking your code into a repository, and I'm going a little deep on the code side. I'm sorry if you're not a code person, but follow me on the analogy, right? Okay, you need to know how to do that, right? You need to know the basic commands. But if you understand the cloud infrastructure behind that, and maybe you could help automate that cloud infrastructure, then you're talking DevOps, and then you're talking a much more lucrative career field, right? But you're not going to jump right into DevOps, right?
Right.
Without having some core understanding of these other things. DevOps is, if you look at cloud certifications, we'll probably talk a little bit about cloud certifications. DevOps is a very high paying, it tends to align, having DevOps certification tends to align to higher paying IT jobs, right? But you don't just say, oh, okay, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to go be a DevOps engineer.
Yeah,
right?
you don't just roll out of bed and it's like, I'm going to give DevOps a try. You know what I mean?
And again, there are some people out there that could do that.
There are those unicorns out there.
Right.
I mean, you can go ahead and hate me in the comments, but there's like one or two unicorns out there. But with that said, that's not the average path. That's not the common way. Yeah. No, and I feel kind of cloud's the same way. You said this earlier. You're not going to go from nothing right into a cloud engineer job. And cloud engineers really don't exist. I feel the most common career path for people getting into cloud is the cloud adjacent fields, the network engineers that are going to be dealing with cloud, the system administrators that are going to do something with cloud. There are a few like cloud centric positions, but most people I feel are touching it in one way or another, not directly, I guess. That's not a good way, but yeah.
They're not coming in directly. And I'll give you, first of all, you're cheating a little bit because you know how I feel on this, but that's cool. But okay, you know what? A career field that is probably cloud focused would be potentially cloud identity management. Right. Okay. Because, like you can work for an organization that is predominantly or even possibly completely cloud-based. But if you're going for that job and all you've done is, let's say your entire career experience is just that you went and you got a difficult to attain certification, fantastic. You should do that, right? But if that's all you have and you're competing with somebody who has on-premises Active Directory experience, it's highly likely you're going to lose out on that position, right?
Right, exactly.
And so even the jobs that are like, and can be, that is what most jobs I think are not. In most organizations, most jobs are not solely cloud, right? Even if you go and you look at the cloud engineer jobs, and I went, because I figured this might come up, and I went and did a little bit, very, very anecdotal research. And, you go on a job site and you look for the cloud engineer job, and a lot of those skills are software engineer jobs or system engineer jobs that happen to be working in a cloud environment, right? And so, understand how things work together. Understand, even if you're never going to pull a cable, even if you're never going to set up a switch, even if you're never going to physically interact with a router, understand those basic fundamentals, right? And sort of get up there, because you're going to need them when you're in the cloud. Understand what Active Directory is. Understand what LDAP is. If you're going and you're thinking about being a cloud identity administrator, right?
Well, and let's be honest, as much as the big blue company, Microsoft, wants to push us all to Azure in the cloud, I mean, it's not going to happen. And nor is probably every organization adapting that. I used to work at a company that not too long ago, and possibly still is still running like their Active Directory levels like 2008, like Server 2008. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And they have no intention to upgrading it because it works for them. We're not going to talk about the security vulnerabilities or any of that stuff. Okay.
Keep that out of the comments, everybody. We all know. We all know.
But, it's organizations, just because it is an option, like the cloud is an option for them, doesn't mean they're going to just jump on that bandwagon. And there's also something to be mentioned about hybrid environments, which I keep on saying a bunch of things we're going to talk about later, but like hybrid environments is a thing. When we had COVID, everything felt like it got pushed up to the cloud really quick, just out of a sense of urgency and uneducation, I feel like. And now stuff has started to trickle down, and what actually makes sense to be in the cloud has been left there, but a lot of stuff's kind of come back to on-premise, and we got these blended hybrid environments. And that's where having that experience with an on-prem system and a cloud, like mixing those skills, makes you even that much more valuable of an employee.
Absolutely. And you know what? You're so correct. And to me, two things make sense, generally speaking, and particularly as you talk about larger organizations: hybrid and multi-cloud. And we'll talk about multi-cloud, but let's talk about hybrid for a minute, right? One of the things that I hear a lot about is, people moved all of their storage up to the cloud, and then they were, I love this word, gobsmacked when they got the bill for the way they were using that storage, right? You still have some quietly really successful companies. Veeam comes to mind, right? That, what they're doing is they're supplying hybrid storage solutions. And the idea being, if you're a large company, right? If you're taking up multiple floors of an office building, and, you probably have a lot of people working on common documents, even individuals that are working on the same documents. And you know what? It's going to be a lot more efficient and a lot more cost efficient if they're working off a machine that's sitting in their environment, and a lot of companies came to realize this is that, and that goes to that one of the two key things that you always have to be careful with the cloud, which is the cost. In a lot of ways, done right, in so many undeniable ways, cloud is going to save an organization money, right? Regardless of the size of the organization. But in a lot of ways, there are solutions where what's worked for decades, at least a lot of years, over a decade, is on premises in terms of things like storage, in some cases compute, still makes sense, right? And you were talking about it, and I saw stories, and this is all anecdotal, where companies had perfectly working on-premises systems, and they moved everything up to the cloud, even though they weren't anywhere near licensing problems on their local stuff. Now, I will tell you, and there's been some things in the market, VMware, recently, where decisions that have been made by on-prem providers are going to push more people to the cloud. But you're mature, intelligent organizations are going to move back and forth between the cloud and on-prem. And also, in some circumstances, particularly larger organizations, are going to be multi-cloud. And, from years ago, and I had done some research, and again, this was pre-COVID, which, wow, that sounds like forever ago. But
I know.
Even back then, I'm going to throw a number out there. It's in the ballpark, and if somebody gets really upset, I'll go back and find it. But it was something like 80% of organizations that were in this one particular survey that were in the cloud were actually multi-cloud, right? And we do that at I&E is we run across all three clouds. We're primarily in AWS, but for certain solutions, Google, I say all three clouds. There's more than three. The three biggest that folks in the US typically use, the big players, right? We use AWS, which is our primary cloud, but we also have production workloads that are in Azure, and we have production workloads that are in Google Cloud because the economics make sense. Now, of course, one thing with all of that, right? When we're talking about being multi-cloud, when we're talking about being hybrid, you are increasing complexity of the solution, right? And so there's, I talk about one of the great things about cloud is that it reduces friction. Anytime you're introducing complexity, you're increasing friction, but there's times where the economics make a ton of sense. And that's, you're so right. And so kind of going back to the original point about hybrid, that if all you know is cloud, you are limiting your career opportunities. I think one thing you're doing is you are, reducing your competitiveness even for opportunities that are nominally cloud specific, but you're also limiting yourself to just those, right? Whereas there's so many organizations that have an on-prem environment. And there are a lot of organizations that are cloud only. I think one thing, just to continuously ramble and not let you talk at all, but one thing that I think is going to be really interesting is, and I'm not going to get into sort of any of the social or political things or anything else, but it's just interesting to see is, with COVID, we had this like rush away from the office, right? And everybody works from home. And then, when then you started coming into this hybrid work environment, and I mean, really ironically, some of the biggest tech companies, Amazon being a example that's been very prominent in 2024, but some of the biggest tech companies are saying you're coming back, right? And I mean, you're coming back full time into the office, right? Yeah. And so, if in 2020 you're like, oh, cool, nobody's ever going to be in the office again, I'm just going to learn cloud. Now you're limited, and so that's, I think the hybrid for the foreseeable future. It's interesting to me to see what's going to happen, because there are a lot of companies. I've worked for a company, my wife has worked for a company, my son has worked for a company that are purely virtual, do not have an office. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next, say, 5 years. But I mean, I think certainly for the foreseeable future, I think for the long term, there's going to be a hybrid environment. That's just something though that'll be interesting to see going forward.
Absolutely. There's pros and cons of hybrid, environment. Some things run better on premise. It makes more sense to keep them local on premise. Some things it makes more sense to farm them out to the cloud. There is tons of different things. Now, we had mentioned, the career field and certifications earlier, and I kind of want to circle back to that.
Yeah.
So, the big vendors out there, AWS, Azure, and Google, they all have their own certification programs, and they're heavily promoted for people that are interested in cloud, but they also can start getting expensive. And in your experience, which, people I know are going to say a little bit biased because you work for an amazing company, INE, who is not sponsoring the video, but they did give me some stuff to give to you guys. I just had to say that. But in your experience, are these certifications really worth the investment to help get you going down the right path? And really, how should someone decide which one to pursue?
So here's my answer to that question. And I'm going to focus the answer on cloud, but I think it also applies across the board. And yes, it applies to what my company offers as well. But we're not even going to focus on that. Here a little bit of background. So I spent close to 30 years as a Microsoft certified trainer, and I had to get certifications in order to teach stuff. And I actually there's a point to this, I promise. I actually have pretty bad test anxiety. I think I'm over 100 certification exams I've taken. I might not be that high. Wow. I know I'm over 70, right? But there are other instructors that there was this guy I knew, he went to the Microsoft conferences every year. And if you were an MCT and you went to a conference, you could basically take exams for free. I'm not sure that was always the case, but he was just pretty much the man. And so they just let him. And he would walk away every year from that conference with 5 new certs. But regardless of that, I don't like taking exams. I was, one of the things that was pretty cool about the position that I'm in now is hey, cool. I don't have to take certification exams anymore. But I'll tell you, as an individual, I've realized I actually miss taking certification exams, because personally, what taking a certification exam does is it makes me focus, right? It's not me playing around going, hey, what I'm doing right now, I'm playing around with AWS OpenSearch. I want to start banging out some code for that, playing around, getting some things done. Oh, cool. Hey, I can get that done. I'm letting AI help me. And I'm learning a little bit about it, but I'm not going deep into it, right? What getting the certs would always do for me personally is it would force me to focus and go deeper and truly understand the concepts that were part of the exam. Now, the exams, yes, they're promoted by the vendors 100%. And I think they're too expensive. Because I think this is also why I'm not in charge of business, but I think that those exams are curated by experts, right? And oftentimes they're curated by the engineers, not necessarily the exam questions, but the exam objectives. They're generated by the engineers that are working on the products. So they understand these products. They understand what needs to be known about these products. Right. And so as an individual, when I was going and taking a certification exam, as much as I hated doing it, I always came out knowing more about that product than I would have known otherwise, knowing more about that technology, how to use it, what it does, what it can't do. Right. And so it was great as an instructor because it also helped me teach the stuff. Now, so there's a personal element to this. There's a personal element that you can now, there are, full disclosure, don't go to these sites. There are brain dump sites. You want to cheat? You want to cheat on a certification exam?
Yeah.
You can cheat on a certification exam. But, okay, fine. You're devaluing the exam, and you're also, this sounds like such a parent thing to say, but you're cheating yourself, okay?
No, 100%.
Okay, but then let's talk about, okay, what does that mean on your resume, right? If I'm talking to someone and, that person has a certification or they have a few certifications, particularly if they have a few certifications where I can see a path and I can see a focus, that's telling me some things about that person. It's telling me, and to me, this is hugely important, that they had the discipline to study and sit there and pass. And maybe it took them a few times. One never even asked that, right? But somebody had the discipline and the drive to go take those exams, right? And assuming that person didn't cheat, it means they have some knowledge base. Now, does that mean if somebody goes and, has taken even the AWS architect professional, that they're going to know everything there is and they've had 10 years of experience with AWS or it's going to be the same as somebody who has had 10 years of experience? No, it doesn't mean that. And nobody who knows what they're doing is going to see that you've got this certification with no experience and it's going to be equal to someone who has the requisite experience, right? But what it does tell me, what's that?
Oh, no, I was agreeing with you.
Good, because man, I don't know where I'd go if you didn't. But what it does tell me, if I'm looking at a resume, again, it says, okay, whatever this person's level of experience is, and I am going to take that into account, right? They've got this drive and they've got at least some set of knowledge. Yeah. And you know what? Certifications are expensive, but usually the more associate level certifications are not super expensive. You're usually talking in the $100 to $200 range, which I understand for some people that is a whole lot of money, but it's also an opportunity. That's a relatively low cost.
You're investing in yourself. You're investing in your career. And if you actually follow through to take the time to learn the knowledge and everything, you're going to get that money back as soon as you land that first job. And before we go on, I want to touch on the whole brain dump thing because I actually experienced that as a hiring manager in my current job. And I can't go into details, but let's just say we hired an individual. He had the certifications. They interviewed really well. Like we hired him. And the first week on the job, it came blatantly obvious really quick. They knew nothing of what like they had on their resume. They didn't actually know the skills whatsoever. And I kid you not, we had to let them go. Like their first day was on a Monday and we handed them their final check on a Friday. Like, that person likely went out and did a brain dump to get the certification and filled out their resume to make themselves look good, but they didn't know actually any of the knowledge to back it up. And when I was asking them, and we're talking the basic tasks here, if you pass this certification, you definitely know how to do these skills I was asking. And they just didn't have the knowledge. So you're just doing yourself a disservice. You're blowing money away. You're not going to get a job in the long run. You're going to get found out really quick. So I 100% agree with you. Brain dumps are the worst thing out there. But yeah, no, it's if the certifications also, and I'm sure you're going to talk about this, they won't get you a job. Let's be honest. They're not going to, if I take the certification, I'm guaranteed a job. No, they will open the door for an interview potentially and give you an opportunity to prove that you're worth hiring. I get the question all the time. Oh, if I get this certification, will I be able to get a job in cloud computing? No. It will help you get an interview potentially. It will check a box as one of those requirements, but it won't get you the job. That is still up to you in the interview process and all that to prove that you're worthy of that position. So I'll let you kind of go off of that and continue though.
You know what? Again, this is going to be we're just sitting here agreeing episode, but no, you're absolutely right. And you know what? I'm going to add to it. I'm going to kind of put together the two things that you said. Having a certification in and of itself is not going to get you that job. And if it does somehow get you the job, it will not keep the job. Right. And so if I'm looking at, two resumes for an entry level position and they're decent. They both meet the requirements for that entry level position. And one of them has, let's say, AWS Architect Associate, which I hate the name of that exam, but that's another story, or Azure Fundamentals or the equivalent on Google Cloud, and the other one doesn't. I'll probably end up interviewing them both, but the one that has that certification is already going to be a little bit of a notch ahead, right? But I'm still probably, if they're equally qualified, and again, we're talking about a fairly, we're talking entry level. I'm saying they're coming in a level 1 support position because they still exist, right? And we have a need for someone with cloud. 100%. And I've been involved with the hiring of our level 1 support staff. And, there's one person who I've seen and I use him as an example. Great. I want to say a great kid because I'm old. He's not a kid. He's an adult. But he came in. He had actually taken, not a plug, he had taken our EJPT, which is our entry-level penetration testing, before he even came and interviewed with us. Now, okay, probably it helped that it was our certification, but seriously, you know what? He had the goods though, right? It definitely got us to look at him. 100%, it got us to look at him that he had that certification that aligned very well with what we needed. But he still had to come in and he still had to interview, and he's been within our organization promoted a few times already. So no certification will get you the job. No boot camp, if you're a coder, no boot camp is going to get you a job. It's going to get you things to put on your resume that are going to make your resume better. They're going to give you a much better chance of getting an interview. Right. And, being able to hold your own in an interview, being able to shine in an interview is its own skill set. And it's vitally important, not a topic for this episode, but huge. And what you said is absolutely true. So it will absolutely help, like 100%, particularly for the more entry level positions. Interestingly, I would say almost more at the entry level and then at the highest level. Right. Is where you'll see a lot of that value in getting those certifications. But also, once you get entry level, one thing 100% that you should think about anytime you start a job is your career growth within that organization, right? Yeah, even like where I am now, I'm always thinking about, okay, like where am I going? Right. And you should always be thinking about that. And part of that is when you're going into an organization, what are their education benefits? Will they sponsor you to get relevant certifications? And most tech companies will.
It's in their best interest. Like you said, most will, but you are learning skills that's only going to make you that much more valuable employee for them.
Yep.
But sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. There's I'm in training. So, the quote that's attributed to a variety of people is, the only thing worse than training someone up and skilling someone up and having them leave the company is not skilling them up and having them stay at the company.
That is true.
And I mean, it's valid. Okay. It's something us in the training industry like to say because we pat ourselves on the back like what we do is great, but it's also kind of true. And most good companies understand that, right? And they're going to help you. INE, the company I work for, we have a program not just for our own certs, right? But if somebody goes and attains a certification that is relevant to their job, they get rewarded for that at INE. And I've seen that in a lot of most companies will do that. So, and again, that all goes back to what you were saying. Hey, these things are expensive. The higher level ones are expensive, but by the time you're ready to be taking a higher level cert, you're probably already in an IT job and you're probably already making good money. Maybe not within the first year, but you're there, right? But those entry level certs, the ones that get you started in cloud, they're kind of a good introduction to what cloud is, and B, they are going to help you get your foot in that door and then let you shine and start and build your career from there.
Absolutely. Now, So for people that are just starting out, it is easy to feel overwhelmed, like you're drowning in all this information. What are some strategies or techniques you recommend for organizing their learning and staying on track without getting overwhelmed? And I'm going to answer this for you because this is what I believe in: is sign up for an online e-learning platform. Like, again, not sponsored, but when I started learning, like, YouTube and all these other platforms are great. And then if that's all you can afford right now is like going, the free route to YouTube University, that is great. But what's nice about, like you mentioned earlier, studying for a certification and then using an online learning platform is they lay it all out for you, whether it's INE or not. But my preferred, in all honesty, is INE. But they lay it all out for you. They make it easy and they give you the tools and resources to study, whether that's, videos, virtual labs, quizzes, and all that. Now that I've said all that, I want to hear your true answer.
Oh, okay. My true answer, I'm going to give you three things. First of all, anyone that can learn anything complicated just through using YouTube. YouTube is a absolutely great platform. I use it all the time. I'm not personally capable of learning something like cloud just by finding even a curated list of YouTube videos. Some people can, and there are some amazing resources.
It's like those people out there that can learn by just reading a book. I'm not one of those people. Kudos to them. That's so great, but I can't just sit down and read a book.
Now, what's interesting is in some cases, I can sometimes learn from reading a book, but also by learning from reading a book, what I mean is I'll read about 10 pages and go, I got to play with this, and I'll go play with it.
Yeah.
But having a curated list of learning objectives that you can go through and that you can track your progress is, to me, invaluable. Look, I work for an online training provider, and we have some cloud content, and we have actually a certification for it, and it's very introductory. We actually created this specifically to help people, and it was the absolute entry point that we wanted to do. We would say we want to get people to the point where they can have conversations about the cloud. Okay, that's the goal, right? Not even necessarily to be able to go in and manage, to be the cloud engineer or whatever. But okay, so how do we get people to that point? And we thought about it and we said, okay, let's start here. Let's cover these topics. And we went through and we designed a curriculum, and we came up with that. Now, look, I would love for you to come to INE and do that. But honestly, any place you go, there are competitors. And if you prefer, okay, go to a competitor. Don't go to a competitor, come to INE. But you can do that. And, also, honestly, if you're just like, look, I know that I can get these, but I literally, man, I am paycheck to paycheck. I'm just barely making rent. I don't have that kind of money to even do that entry level stuff. Look, I get it. That's real. The providers do have free online content that is aligned to their certifications. Personally, and I say this truthfully, I don't think by and large it has as much as the paid providers do, but it is absolutely better than nothing, and it is curated, and it does take you through a process, right? So
absolutely,
if you can swing it, I would definitely recommend taking a look. There are a lot of different options that will meet the way you learn, right? First of all, you need to kind of figure out how you learn. And if you don't know how you learn, honestly, YouTube is a good way to sort of play around, right? Go pick some topics, see if you can learn it, see if you can do it, figure out the best way that you learn. But there are a lot of providers. We are one of them that are pretty affordable. But again, if you don't have that, the cloud providers themselves have introductory content, and it is curated. And that, to me, the curated part, I use that word a lot. It's important to me because literally for me personally, it's important. Just because I don't have the level of self-discipline to go through and
The same way.
I'm actually, it's funny, like totally aside, I'm working on doing like 3D modeling because I've done 3D printing and I've never really dove deep into it. I'm just like, oh, okay, here's this thing I made on this really simple platform and it kind of printed. There you go. I've got the Ender 5, man. But you know, and I can print stuff and I've made some stuff like, you know, but I've never really dove deep into it. And so I got this like much more sophisticated application. And, you know, I've like, oh, okay, I'll kind of learn it. And I kind of gone at it really haphazard. And every time I'll go and I'll spend an hour on it and then I'll go away for a week. And then I'm like, I know vaguely I learned something, but now I need to go spend that hour again and maybe another half hour. And I don't have the discipline to do that. So, you know, that for me personally, and having that curated list where I can go through, where I've got milestones, where I can see the progress that I'm making, that is just like, there's value to that beyond just whatever the content is.
Absolutely. Now's a good time for me to mention again, this video has not been sponsored by INE, but I do greatly appreciate them. And if anyone out there who's listening or watching this is interested in INE, there is a link down in the show notes and the description. It's an affiliate link. I'll get a small commission off of that. But seriously, you know, INE, like just this year, we've switched at my work, our learning platform to INE. Everyone in the Network Operations Center now has an INE subscription. And we've also done the, oh my gosh, skill dive, right?
Cool.
Yeah, we did that as well. With the, you know, for networking, which is another cool feature. I actually did a video with you, Tracy. You know, gosh, that was like what, a year ago or so.
Oh, yeah,
talking about
right.
that. Yeah, right when it first came out. But yeah, again, not sponsored, but I truly do enjoy INE. There's just so much information, and you guys have done such a good job presenting it. Because one thing I have found with some of the vendors out there that, you know, have their own information is sometimes the material can be a little bit dry and hard to follow. You know what I mean? And you guys just do such a nice job of making it just fun and enjoyable to watch. So
I appreciate that. It's something that we're proud of our content team. And again, yeah, this is not, and I will, you know, look, I'm happy with the company I work with. I think we do a really good job, but my advice to you is more general, right? You know, if I think we're a really, really good option, but there are other options out there that are also good. And I'm not going to try and say they're not.
While we're talking about studying and stuff and like how to like not get overwhelmed, staying motivated over the long haul can be a really big challenge for learners. Like, you know, you were just talking about, you know, finding out your different study methods and stuff like that. And what have you found to be the most effective way to like avoid burnout with studying? Because that's another thing, you know, is, you know, not only like staying aligned, but there's the people on the complete opposite end that just study so hard they get burnout on it and just up and quit, you know, right before the finish line. What's your pieces of advice on that?
So I can tell you the wrong way to do it, which is to spend an hour here and there and you'll never get anywhere. Yeah. I think first of all, okay, it's actually really simple. I'm sitting here trying to overcomplicate it. It's simple. Have a plan. Like, plan out your studying. So, and like full disclosure, I was actually thinking about this. I've been thinking about this a lot lately for myself, because right now I'm in a place where I'm not studying as well as I used to study. And I was thinking about, okay, like, why is that? Is it because I'm older? And the answer to that is no. But I'm like, okay, why am I not studying like I used to? And, you know, I thought about it, and part of it is that I don't have, quite honestly, the same level of necessary motivation, right? You know, if you are in a job that you absolutely hate and you want to get in IT, you're going to be motivated. If you're working for a job, and this is, you know, that's the sort of negative motivation. There are a lot of companies that have rewards programs. that are gonna financially reward you for getting relevant certifications. That's a great motivation. You need to find your motivation.
Up in that.
Yeah. And I mean, it was honestly, that part of it was easy for me for almost 30 years because I had to have certifications in order to make the paycheck doing what I wanted to do. So there's two parts to this. The first is find your motivation, right? Like, why are you doing this? And if you don't have a good reason to do it, if you're just doing it because you're like, I heard cloud was a good way to make money. That's not going to get you there, and you're not going to finish. If you say, hey, I've played around with cloud a little bit. I went and watched some videos, and this looks really cool. And I went, and this guy Tracy on this really cool video podcast episode said that I could go and get this trial account and get some free stuff. And I did that, and I played around. I was like, this is what I want to do. If you have that moment like I did over 30 years ago where I was talking to my wife and she said, what do you want to do? And it was clear, right? That's going to be your motivation. And like, hopefully it's cloud because cloud's cool, but maybe it's cybersecurity. Maybe it's, networking. Maybe it's nursing, right? Like, but you got to find your motivation. And I think a positive motivation, something you find you want to do, is better than a negative one. That's one. Two is set a plan. And like, one of the things that I used to do when I was studying for a certification is I would go and I would download all the certifications are going to publish a list of objectives. And I would literally take that list of objectives and I would drop it into a spreadsheet and I would break it out. So I had every possible certification on a separate line. And that was my map, right? And then I go through, and certainly as I was more experienced, I would go through and be like, okay, I know this in my sleep. I know, and I would knock off the ones that I didn't know, that I already knew. And I knew I'll look at these, but I don't necessarily, need to dive into them, right? And then I would say, okay, here's the rest of what I need to know, right? And then I would use a structured learning tool, right? Like an online learning platform. If you learn off of books, I actually used to just take the training manuals because I could learn that way. Because again, it'd be 10 pages and go play with stuff, right? But, find a structured, curated path. But then plan your time, right? And there are two things that will keep you from being successful. The first is if you don't have good motivation, okay? Because it's going to be hard. Like, if anything worthwhile is hard, you need the motivation. And the second thing is you need a plan and you need to stick to it. Look at your life, right? And this is how you avoid the burnout, and say, okay, I want to dedicate time to learning this thing. And I've done research online and it says that on average, it's going to take me 40 to 60 hours to learn this thing, okay? How do I fit that into my life in such a way that I'm going to do it regularly? Because if you don't do it regularly, you're going to forget stuff and you end up wasting a lot of time relearning the same thing, right? How am I going to have the time so that I can do this regularly and it doesn't negatively impact my life? Like, and I'll tell you, for me, that's easy. I spend an embarrassing amount of time scrolling Reddit, okay? I can really easily substitute time and do something productive. So it's easy for me to find that, right? If, I am working a 60-hour-a-week job and I've got young kids at home and, my wife and I are both working all the time, that time's going to be harder to find. I'm going to have to, and honestly, I'm going to have a conversation with the people that are going to be affected by it, right? If I'm married,
I've been there.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to my spouse and I'm going to say, hey, I really want to do this. And it looks like I'm going to need to spend realistically to get this done and to stay motivated. I'm going to need to spend an hour and a half every night, or I'm going to have to spend 2 hours on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a couple hours on Saturday. Can we make this work? Right? Because, kind of along with planning, if you don't plan it into your life, right, then it's going to cause friction that's going to make it not work. And so those are the things that I would do. Find your motivation and make a realistic plan that you look at and it'll fit with your life. Oh, and by the way, the kind of, quick, go direct, whatever it is, do not pass, go collect $200, whatever that saying is if you're working for a company that supports it, because not only will you have positive motivation, but talk to your manager and see if you can get some time during your workday allotted to actually doing preparation, right?
100%.
And there are companies that will do that. There are companies that won't, but there are companies that will do that. And you miss every shot you don't take, right? To quote a very famous sports person. But yeah, get the motivation, get the plan, execute the plan, get the certification, continue your career.
So I'm going to get on the soapbox now, and I'm going to talk to you. So everything you said spoke directly to me, because that's exactly how I got into the field. So, and I apologize if anyone, who's listening to this or watching has heard the story, but it's a true story that I went through to get into the tech field. And I feel it's important because I know someone out there is going to relate to this and it's going to help them. So before I got into tech, I was a bulldozer operator. I was working those 12 to 16 hour days. I was making actually really good money. This was several years ago. I was making like 70 grand a year. And that's no like chump change. Especially a couple of years ago before all the COVID inflation. Anyway, not political. But I hated the job. I absolutely was miserable and I wanted out. I had worked manufacturing jobs, production jobs all my life. They were mind numbing. I wasn't being challenged at all. I would get challenged like when I got a new job and then like it would go away. And I finally went to my wife and I'm like, I want to be in the tech field. Like, I hate this. Like, I'm miserable. And, at first it was like, well, you got a good job. At the time we had 2 kids and a third one on the way. And it was just like, okay, I understand, but I didn't just let it die there, because you might not always get buy-in right away from the family, or, the important people in your life. But I agree with you. It's vital to be successful, just to get that support. And what I had to do is I had to really kind of prove like why the switch would be beneficial, because I already knew I wasn't going to land like a $70,000, $80,000 a year job out of the gate. There was going to be a pay cut. I mean, just for an entry level job. I'm a college dropout. I didn't have that going for me. And I had no experience in the field. So I started studying. I started researching, okay, what do I need to land this job? I'm not going to just, tomorrow, someone's not just going to give me a job. I need to be prepared. And one thing for me was certifications. Like, that's how I can differentiate myself. I'm not going back to school. I'm not getting all this college debt. Certifications is an easy route. And yeah, it was, I went for the A+, the 2 exams. I was like $600 plus. I paid for an online learning platform, which at the time was CBT Nuggets, which was also really expensive at the time too. Is like $100-something a month. And it was hard to justify. Like, I'm paying $100 something, a month for a job I don't even have yet and all this. But like, I had made the decision, like, this is what I want to do. In that process of studying for those certifications, I actually ended up losing my job as a bulldozer operator. And I don't think I've told this part of the story before. So I actually lost my job as a bulldozer operator. We had just bought a house like a year after, before then. We had 3 kids now. And I go to my wife, I'm like, okay, I have a decision to make here. Either A, I can get another job. I was certified to drive like these big giant bulldozers. And I'm like, I could get another job probably pretty quickly doing the same thing. I absolutely hate it though. I'm working crazy hours at the time. Like, she was working too. So I would come home and if I was lucky, I'd get like 4 hours of sleep. And I promise everyone who's listening, there's a point to all this. And I'm like, or plan B is I could try to go into tech. And it's going to be difficult because the area we lived in was a small town and there wasn't a lot of tech opportunities. And she's like, if this is something you really want, I'm going to stand behind you and we will do whatever it takes. And I said, what if that means we have to move? And, because we were close to family and stuff. And she's like, let's do it. We have nothing tying us down right now. Let's make this change. So we actually decided before I landed a job, we're going to move about 2.5 hours away to this place that's more tech populated. And I started applying for jobs and I really doubled down on studying for certifications. Still don't have any certifications yet, but I started doing all this networking stuff. And I ended up landing a job like 2 weeks before we decided, hey, we're selling our house. We're moving. We're just full in both feet. But it wasn't the point I'm making is it wasn't until like I had my wife behind me that I actually could make it happen. I could set aside time from watching the kids. I put it on the calendar, like, okay, from this hour to this hour is my study time. And it was what we had to do. And then once I landed that first job, I'm like, I got to keep this momentum going. I got to, I took a $20,000 a year pay cut to get that first job. And I'm like, I got to make that difference up. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to be better educated. I'm going to be more valuable to the company. I'm going to continue studying. So I did that. And to continue doing that, to find time, now I'm working. I have 3 kids. We're living in a town we don't know of. I got to find time to study. And so I penciled it on the calendar. I'm like, okay, we're going to continue this, and that's what got me there. And there was that continued hard effort. I went from the help desk to director of network operations in 3 years' time. And that's not typical, but what I'm getting at is if you have the discipline to persevere and work hard and you're truly passionate about it and not in it just for the money, you can do that too. And I know I kind of went 3 different ways with that story, but I just felt it was a fitting story to add there and hopefully inspire someone that, if this is truly something you want, you got to just find a way to make it happen.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. So a couple of things. First of all, fantastic story. I hadn't heard the whole thing. What an origin story, though. And I will say that I'm probably amongst many in the tech that say, dude, you were driving a bulldozer. That's what we all want to do.
I know.
But no, I get it. Like you wanted to go and really, expand your mind and use it more. So I have the question for you.
Yeah.
So your initial motivation was what I would consider to be a negative motivation, right? You were trying to move away from something negative. What was the tipping point, right? At what point did you go, wow, this is really cool, right? Because you don't go from that to director of network operations or, managing the network operations without that, that passion for it, right? Because you'd gotten your way out. You wanted to make more money, sure. But what was the point where you're like, wow, this is really cool. This is really what I want to be doing?
So that didn't happen until I'd say about a year into my first job as a help desk. So in that first job, I worked for a hotel company and I got hired on as a IT support specialist. With anyone that has worked in the field or is looking to get in the field will quickly realize job titles suck in the tech field. You can have 3 different people working for 3 different companies, all the same job title, and they'll be all doing something different. Yeah. But I in a nutshell, I was help desk. I was creating AD accounts, resetting email passwords, the basics, just managing responding to tickets in a ticketing system. But again, like I said, I really wanted to do more. I wanted to develop my skills. So I started learning more networking. Networking had always been an interest of mine. Back in high school, I actually took the CCNA course in high school and studied for the CCNA. Never really did anything with that. That all went away. Because those certifications only last on average 3 years, depending on which certification you're going for. But anywho, a year in, I started doing stuff with the network at this organization, and I got asked to start weighing in on, we're building new hotels, and start listening into these architect meetings, and we're planning like, okay, we need an IDF here and we need an IDF here, and an MDF, and this is where we're putting the network switches, all that. And I'm like, man, this is fun. And I dove in head first with that. And I'm like, it's the point where the job, like, yes, it was enjoyable in the beginning, because it was, a new career field, but that's the part where like, I write something down on this drawing and I actually see it come to life. I'm planning these network runs and Wi-Fi mapping in 3D space type of thing on like how these access points are placed. That's when it, for me, was like, it just lit something inside me. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm like, this is like what I was meant to do. And I think that fueled me to just learn more. Like I became a bottomless pit of knowledge. Like I had to learn it all. I started going to like these training events. Like I got to fly out to San Francisco to Cisco Meraki's headquarters and like be one of the first people to go through their Cisco Meraki certification program, because that's what we did at that organization. And once I did that, like I started getting more responsibilities. And, by the time I left that company 2 years later, I was designing the complete IT infrastructure for hotels. It was cool. I not only got to design it all and sit down with the architects and the engineers that were building the building, but once the building was built, I was the one who actually flew out to there and got to like place the access points and see it come to fruition. That's really what did it for me. And then when I left that company, that momentum never stopped. It just kept on going and kept on going. And the reason I moved so quickly in my career is people noticed that. People noticed that I just I came to work and did 110% every day. And that's like the position of director of network operation wasn't even available when I got hired. It didn't even quite exist. It was through that hard work I got that position. So hopefully that answered your question.
No, it does. And okay. Here's the thing for anybody watching this, like what you just saw, what you just listened to, that's what's going to make your career successful. I'm not saying you need to do exactly what Dakota's done. What I'm saying is you need to find that spark. You need to find that thing that you're passionate about. Like the coolest thing, and I don't want to take too much time, but I've already done it, so why not? The coolest thing. So I was, my final semester is actually summer session, of undergraduate. And yes, I was on the 7-year undergraduate, program, me and Tommy Boy, if you get that reference. But my last semester, I was taking a senior level fluid dynamics course. And I had one more elective. So I took a landscape architecture course because like I thought, and this is like, I promise much respect. I thought it was like, okay, how to mow lawns. I was wrong. It was actually a really informative course. But the thing that I got out of the course that this was like, I don't want to say it's been more than 30 years. I'm not going to say how many more than 30 years. Actually, I know exactly how long it's been because my son was born 2 days after I took my last exam. But the professor was amazing. Don't know his name. Wouldn't know it if you showed it to me. But he was amazing. And like a lot of stuff not to do with landscape architecture. But he said, okay, what you need to do is you need to write down what you want to do. Write down what you love. All right. And then follow that. Now, to be fair, I didn't write it down, but I did think about it. And for me, what I love is I love building stuff. Like I know that's kind of generic, but really that's it. Like it doesn't matter if I'm printing something silly on a 3D printer or I'm building an application that's being deployed internationally, globally, or a database, or I'm putting in a basement in a house. I love building stuff. And I thought about that. And honestly, that's sort of sparked my entire career. right? And then, you talking about that, you found that spark, you found that part that you love, because the end of the day, that's the motivation, right? And this stuff is hard. Like, I used to coach soccer, and I loved coaching the little kids. And coaching little kids wasn't about building these incredible skill sets that they could look like Ronaldinho, just breaking people's legs when they were 9 years old or whatever. It was about developing the love of soccer, right? We did things that weren't even related to soccer. I wanted the kids to love soccer, right? Because then the kids who were good, when they got later, when they were in their teenage years and they were working really, really hard, and they were missing out, and because there's few of them got really serious about it, they had that love of the thing, and that was their motivation. Right. And it would get them through those really hard times. Right. And you found that love, and, like, you sacrificed to get to that point. It's phenomenal. But honestly, I don't think if you had not found that love of doing it that you did a year in, I don't think you would have been able to continue for indefinitely to where you are now.
Exactly.
Right? You have to have passion. So take a look at cloud, but think about what you want to do. Think about what you're passionate about, because if you're going to be successful, anything you do, it's going to be hard, and you have to have that motivation to keep going. So great story. I'm so glad that you shared that.
I appreciate that. And, I'm curious, if you had to start fresh today with like no prior knowledge, what would your approach be to learning the cloud, and what would you do differently? But before you answer that, if people want to reach out to you, have questions for you, where can they find you?
You can find me probably I'm not great at social media. Probably the social media that I pay most attention to is LinkedIn, and Dakota may have my LinkedIn. I'll be happy to send it to you. You can always email me at INE. It's my name, T Wallace at INE.com. Again, give you that link. Love to talk to people. It'd be fantastic. That's a really hard question. I'm going to try and answer it honestly, but I'm also going to tell you it's going to be really hard for me, because in a sense, I was kind of doing what led me to right where I am now when I was like 9 or 10 years old. My parents got me this thing, and you want to go have some fun, go look up something called Big Track. It was this toy tank thing, but you could program it. And you could make it go in a direction and make it turn, and then make it go in a direction and make it turn. It was very simple, but I had that thing going from my room through the hallway to the living room and running over Star Wars action figures, because maybe I had a little bit of a, but like, so it's a little hard for me to say that, because in a sense, my origin started way back then, right? So, but I'm saying, okay, let's say I didn't have that. Right? Where would I go from here, right? If I'm just starting out. Okay. I would say that what you want to do is I would say take the sample platter, right? Take a look at cloud, because first of all, cloud is going to be a good place to start for so many different things, right? But while you're looking at cloud, I also, as I said before, I don't think cloud, generally speaking, in of itself is a standalone thing, right? It gives you all these other opportunities. But what it does give you is it lets you play around with networking a little bit. It lets you play around with cybersecurity a little bit. It lets you play around with application development, with databases, with AI, right? And they're designed to make it easy. So, you need to find what you love, right? And I was, like I said, I was lucky, because in a sense, I found that when I was like a kid, and it was credit to my parents. Good grief. But you got to find the thing you love. Cloud is a great way to start that, right? If you're still not sure, go for some introductory certifications, and honestly, probably cloud is the best place to go, because cloud does have, 200 plus services, right? You're going to learn those basics, and you're going to touch on a lot of little things. It's not going to be overwhelming, right? Because the people that create the certifications, they're not stupid. We're not stupid. Microsoft's not stupid. AWS is not stupid. They want you to succeed. They're not going to overwhelm you. Honestly, I went through some AWS training for for their whatever, what is it, cloud practitioner, which is, I will tell you, I don't think cloud practitioner is a super valuable certification. I think if you're going to AWS, maybe go through cloud. I think you can actually maybe even get that for free now. I'm not sure about that, but if you kind of go that route, go for the next level up, which is AWS Architect Associate. Again, if you've decided, I definitely want to pursue some cloud stuff, but like I went through their content for their cloud practitioner, and honestly, it was like pretty good. Like if I didn't know anything about cloud, like I'd be learning some cloud stuff here. And so go and cloud's a great place to start in IT if you don't know what you do, because it does a little bit of everything. But you do need to find what your passion is. That's the way forward. And that's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but it's the best answer that I can give you. Like cloud gives you these great opportunities, but you got to find what you want to do within those opportunities and go forward. Could be application development, could be databases, could be AI, could be cybersecurity, could be just system administration. You just like setting up systems for other people to use. That's great. Could be automation. So many different things that you can go into that you get a little touch of as you start cloud and can then really go on that journey.
So much good advice there. And let me add to that is everyone has their own path into the field. There's really no right or wrong path unless you do brain dumps into this field. And everyone's journey is going to look different, and you got to find out what works best for you. That's what it all boils down to. Now, if you made it this far in the video, thank you. I hope you took something away from this. And as promised, I have a giveaway for you. We're giving away 3 one-year premium INE subscriptions packed with everything you need to kickstart your journey in cloud and really the tech field. The link to sign up for that giveaway is down in the description, and you'll need the code INE Cloud, like it says here on the screen. And don't wait. This is like your chance to invest in yourself and start building the future in tech that you guys really want. And again, thank you, Tracy, and thank you, INE, for giving me this opportunity. And we actually have more of these subscriptions we're going to be giving away this week. So if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed, have that bell icon on, because we actually have 10 of these subscriptions we're going to be giving away this whole week. So thank you again, Tracy, for coming on and giving us all this wonderful information. And thank you to INE for giving me this opportunity.
Oh, man. Seriously, Dakota, the things that you do in the community are fantastic. We appreciate it. We are honored to be able to support you in a small way. And thank you all again for, if you stayed here, hopefully he's going to, edit down some of my long-windedness. But in any case, truly always great talking to you.
Thank you again for coming on and sharing your wisdom. And this isn't the first time Tracy's been on the channel. We've actually mentioned it earlier in the video that you've been on this channel several times, and we've actually recreated a complete in-depth roadmap into the cloud industry in our last video. If you're interested in checking that out and taking a look at some actionable steps, I actually have it linked up here for you guys. So you can go click on that video and get even more great information, great knowledge from Tracy, and pursue your career in the cloud. Thank you again, guys, for watching. And until next time, keep learning.